Good afternoon, everyone. Today is September 30th, and this is Conversations from Stritch. I'm really excited to have you here. Dr. Sint and I are back in studio, and we're excited for today's show. A few things, just some general announcements to start with. This past weekend, as you have been hearing from me at the show, we had our Signum Fidei fundraising gala. It was a really wonderful event. I wanted to thank everyone involved, especially conference and events, our advancement team, our studio professionals here, John Kilpatrick and his whole team, our students, for all the work they did. We raised about $295,000 that evening, exceeded our goal, and of course, all of those funds go to some of our most vulnerable students. So it's a really wonderful event, and I wanted to thank everyone who donated that evening and everyone who made the evening possible. It was a really wonderful, wonderful night. This weekend, on Saturday, we are looking forward to welcoming families to campus. I think we have about 350 people coming to campus on Saturday for Family Day. The activities include family improv, flight simulations, hands-on chemistry, Harry Potter trivia, Christian Brothers stories, a drive-in movie, which should be really great, and of course, bingo hosted by Chris and I. So if you want to come out and play some bingo, that would be great. Chris, you have some news this week about some of the amazing things that our faculty are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to Saturday and watching some of those events. And I think you call bingo, right?
Oh, you call it, yes.
I think I know that. And so,
yes.
And I got to do that last year all by myself. So
all right, so I'll either pick out the balls out of the thing and you can call the numbers, or one
to
vice
do it
versa.
between the two of us.
But
it'll be fun to be with students and their families on Saturday. And yeah, Signum Fidei was wonderful and powerful for our students. So I have a few announcements about some accomplishments by faculty on campus and students on campus, as well as an upcoming event. So first of all, congratulations to Dr. Natalia Tapia, Professor of Justice Law and Public Safety Studies, who is the co-author of an article published in the International Journal of Police Science and Management. The article is called Cultivation Theory, the Impact of Crime Media's Portrayal of Race on the Desire to Become a U.S. Police Officer. Totally fascinating. Yeah. That was published on August 6th. Congratulations to Dr. James Morris, Assistant Professor of Psychology, who co-authored an article with a Lewis alum, Antoine Briers, as well as Brian Morris of National Louis University, and that article is titled COVID Shelter-in-Place Orders and Mental Health Outcomes Among College Undergraduates. Also fascinating and timely.
Very.
And that was published in the Journal of American College Health. Congratulations to Dr. John Halloran, Assistant Professor of Social Work, and student Alexania Castaneda, who is a public policy major, who co-authored an article in the Journal on Policy and Complex Systems called Simplifying Complexity in COVID-19 Policy, Agenda Setting Processes for Complex Adaptive Systems Research. That is a great title and amazing work. You know, it's always just so cool to see that. I mean, I know I guess in some ways it means these issues that have been so present with us, COVID-19 and race and policing in the United States has been with us for so long. But I'm so excited that our students and faculty are doing, research on these just vitally important topics for our society right now. Congrats to the History Department, who hosted the 11th annual conference of the Midwest World History Association on September 24th and 25th here on our campus. It's great to be hosting. I think that was in person and virtual conference, so that was nice to have a few scholars from around the Midwest coming to campus to present. The theme of that particular, this year's conference was Crisis and Recovery in World History. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that the Philip Lynch Theater is opening its season tomorrow night with a play called William Shakespeare's Long First Play Abridged. And that is confusing to me when I first read about this. It's not a William Shakespeare play, it's a play with that title. written by Austin Tishner and Reed Martin. And I don't know if you read about this yet, or
I heard there's a lot of actors.
There's 5 actors doing lots of roles.
Lots of roles, right? Exactly.
And,
yes,
and it
right.
it is connected to Shakespeare in an appreciation of Shakespeare and a lot of, I think, quotations in a new way related to it. But it's a new play, or a relatively new play, and it should be really fun to watch. So performances run from October 1st to 3rd, and October 7th to 10, again at the Philip Lynch Theater here on our campus. And would you like to give some athletic news?
Athletic highlights, but I do want to just mention again, I feel like in the last week, around Signum Fidei, and then the students publishing with their faculty, because when I think about Signum Fidei, we had several students that actually work in the studio that are radio and TV majors that helped out with creating the virtual experience coupled with the live experience, which was complicated to do.
Yeah.
Really grateful for them, and they're learning from that experience. And then, of course, we have students who are working with our faculty and publishing. So they're doing the research, and they're getting their first, maybe their second authored article in a journal, which is fabulous. So moving over to our student athletes, Lewis University men's golf team finished in a tie for 5th at the Cedarville Match Play Tournament at the Country Club of North in Xenia, Ohio on Monday and Tuesday this week. Our women's volleyball team, 14th ranked women's volleyball team, defeated Indianapolis 3-1 on Tuesday night. The Flyers are at home this weekend. They'll take on Maryville Friday night at 7 p.m. And then we'll host Lindenwood on Saturday afternoon at 3. So come out to Neil Carey and watch our women's volleyball team continue what has been a really great season. Women's and men's soccer wrap up their 3-game road trip on Friday with a visit to Illinois Springfield. So it's been another great week for Lewis Athletics, and we look forward to another really productive weekend. And now turning back to the, kind of one of the subjects that we're always coming back to, as you said, we have some research now starting to be published in all sorts of arenas, but by our own faculty on COVID. But what's going on COVID on Lewis campus right now, and what's new?
Okay, I'd like to share some updates and also announce a couple of new things related to our approach to COVID-19 and testing. So I think we have some of our usual update slides here. Our number of Will County cases per 100,000 in the latest tally was 145, so that is a pretty significant drop from last week to this week, but still very much in that red zone that we've talked about as a threshold for and basis for the Illinois order and so on. We've had, in the final tally last week, we had 6 positive cases and 5 so far this week. Vaccination rates in Will County are sitting at 52%, and then some things have not changed very much with our residential students and employees fully reporting and sitting at 91 and 93% vaccination status, but our students, our large group of students who are coming to campus who both live on campus and are commuting students, have now reported at an 88% rate, which is another big jump.
That's great.
And the vaccination rate is also going up with that group up to 90%. So that's all really great news. Next, I want to talk a bit about testing. So some of this is a reminder, and some of it is an addition to this policy. So the reminder that unvaccinated students taking in-person classes and unvaccinated employees need to submit a weekly COVID-19 test. If you have not reported your vaccination status, you are considered unvaccinated. So it's both people who've asked for an exemption and been granted an exemption, and people who have not reported their status need to test weekly. So you need to submit a negative test before 6 p.m. on Thursday evenings, and they need to be administered no earlier than Sunday so that it's in the right window to be meaningful on Thursday evening. You can test anywhere. It must be a PCR test. They're available in my email and on our website. There's a link to places where you can look up testing sites, but it's also on our campus every week, same time, same place in Memorial Union, Tuesdays 8 to 11 and Wednesdays 11 to 2. And then finally, this is the new announcement. So for those people, and people have been amazing, or as those percentages indicate, tons and tons of people have been reporting in the last couple of weeks, and many did it through the summer, as we've talked about. So we're so grateful and impressed with our community for reporting and sticking to our policies and beginning the testing. Some people, of course, are not. So as we've talked about in previous weeks, there needs to be a further attempt to complete this work, and as is required by the state order. So starting next week, we're implementing a registration hold and a fine on student accounts for those who have not submitted their vaccination status or applied for an exemption by October 7th. So that's point number one.
Tested every week.
Right. So
Okay.
So I'm trying to.
All right. You finish.
It's very interconnected, but it's really two things. So if you have not submitted your vaccination status or applied for an exemption by October 7th, this registration hold will be placed and fines will begin. And then similarly, a registration hold and a fine will be placed on student accounts if you have not submitted weekly testing. So often those are the same thing, because if you have not submitted your vaccination status, we consider you unvaccinated. So even if you are vaccinated, you are still in that group and you need to report your vaccination status. Every individual person who is in the category of people who would have that fine assessed or would have that registration hold has received several individualized emails and texts and phone calls regarding this. So if you are getting those and you will get more information today or soon, I'm not sure exactly when it will be, from our COVID hotline team with more details about how this policy functions.
And maybe if I could just make a comment about that. So I just want to emphasize what you're saying is for basically 4 months, they've been notified that they needed to comply with the policy. For the last month and a half, they've been receiving updates about, and then for the last 3 weeks, they've been getting individualized emails or phone calls, and all of that is leading to now fines. Yeah. But it's not the first time they've heard from us about this.
Right, that's right. And many of the people on that list may, where they receive a lot of emails, they might be a part-time student who's attending class 1 day a week or 1 hour a week. So they may not think that these emails apply to them.
Sure.
And very often, which is why our vaccination rate is going up, is that people are vaccinated or would be happy to comply with the policy, but don't understand that the email is individually directed to them or is being sent to them because they are on the list of people we have who are not reporting. So if you are getting that email or know someone who's getting an email saying, very specifically by name, you have been identified as someone who we don't have a report from you about your or proof of vaccination status, it means that you have been identified individually, and it's not a mass email or something like that that you're receiving. So please pass that message along to anybody you know who's receiving that. So that's all about that.
So let's go to our guest. I'm excited about our topic today.
We're very happy to welcome Dr. John Planek, who is sitting with us. He snuck in while I was talking. And I would like to introduce him, as is our custom on our show here. So Dr. John Planek has had a storied career in Chicagoland athletics. He was assistant and associate AD at Paul for many years, and then went on to be the athletic director at Loyola University for over 10 years before joining Lewis as athletic director in 2012. He holds a BA from IIT and an MA in sports administration from St. Thomas University, and a PhD in educational leadership from Loyola University, and teaches in our sport management program in addition to being our athletic director. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to talk about your credentials. We don't do that very often, and it's impressive. It's an amazing.
It's good that I have some too.
Yeah,
that's great.
Right. Absolutely. So we have an audience here who might be watching the show, who might be a student athlete, might be a coach, might also be a parent of a prospective student who doesn't know anything about Lewis athletics. So we want to ask some, really preliminary questions about the athletics program at Lewis. So first of all, what is an athletic director?
Okay,
Since you've-
I think that an athletic director is an individual that wears many hats and
Yeah.
try to balance a lot of things at one time. But I think that, as an athletic director, obviously I oversee the intercollegiate athletic department, which entails hiring and evaluating coaches. Then, there's budget matters that we are engaged in many times with conversations as it relates to scholarships and funding of the individual athletic programs. Then there's oversight of athletic facilities and what that means and planning, some capital plans to help our programs. And then all of that done in a balance of making sure you're adhering to NCAA rules, GLVC rules, Lewis rules, and then, all the other things that are what we call the NCAA. So I think it's multi-varied, multi-dimensional, and never dull.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things, John, that I know, you're responsible for hiring of all of our coaches, which is a huge task as well. But maybe again, going back to this kind of starting at the top, the NCAA is also divided into 3 divisions. So what are the unique characteristics of Division II, which is where Lewis stands, versus Division I, Division III? Many people are familiar with them as kind of, my niece goes there, my daughter went there, but they may not know really what makes Division II unique.
Yeah, I think the division of those, or the parameters that divide them, are really come around scholarship offerings and funding of the programs. So at Division II and Division I, you can actually pay or have students get awarded talents based on their athletic ability.
Yeah.
And at Division III, that's not something that's done. So Division III, if you would get money or funds from a school, it'd be solely based upon your academic merit or financial need. And so there would be no athletic aid that would be given at the Division III level. So Division I and Division II does give athletic aid, and then it's just a matter of to what extent that they give that. The Division I has a more robust scholarship funding for their programs, and Division II does as well, but not at the level of Division I. And then there's also the segmentation of schools, usually based upon size of the school. Sure. And most of your land grant institutions are Division I. More of them have larger programs. So, and not to say that some Division II, there's a large number of Division II programs that have pretty good, robust enrollment, but they don't have the athletic NCAA support of the athletic awards for scholarships.
So I know this is kind of a trick question for our audience, not for you. So give me some names of some other Division II schools in the Chicago metro area.
Yeah, we're the only one in the metro area.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's a few in state. So I think that we do a good job, I think an excellent job of balancing the parameters of institutional aid that you can be given by the school, obviously, and then athletic aid that's been given by the athletic department, along with balancing that with what we're offering from a competitive standpoint. Yeah. Our athletic sports, I say to many people who are looking at Lewis as a possibility for their son or daughter to attend, or they just might ask me in casual conversation, and they ask me, well, how good do you have to be? And I said, if you're being recruited by Division I schools, then you have a chance to play and be a productive member at Lewis. If you're not, or you're not at that cusp, you probably are going to be disappointed. And many of our student athletes have had tremendous success, not only at our level, but at the NCAA level in championships. I think of our track team where we have 2 or 3 of the fastest runners, not only in the conference, but in the country.
Yes.
And then our volleyball team obviously is competing at the highest level that the NCAA offers them. Right. And then we had numerous instances of people having great careers here in those other sports and going on and being very, very successful in the athletic endeavors.
Sure.
This is kind of a hard question, John, so I apologize in advance, but you have experience with, before we get off the division question, you have experience with Division I programs, right, or, universities. Do you observe cultural differences in, not so much technically, but in terms of the outcome of how the student athletes are a part of the community or a part of the university culture?
I've been fortunate to be involved with 3 Catholic institutions in higher education. Yeah. So you talk about being associated with a mission along with being a part of a athletic enterprise. So I think all of those schools have that same thing. So it's kind of a similar feeling to it, that there's a mission involved in what we do. And there's also, if you're at the right schools, I think there's a good level of putting importance on intercollegiate athletics, but that balancing that.
Right.
And I think Division II, by their identification, doing life in the balance and things of that nature, do a better job than Division I. But that's not to say at Division II they're not serious about intercollegiate athletics.
Sure, of course.
So it's a fine line that you balance, and I do think at the Division II level, with things that they put in place specifically for that reason, do a better job of balancing it.
And
Because
that
it's-
balance is mental health,
Yeah.
academics,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think it's more at the forefront because of the nature of what they claim to be.
Right.
But I don't think that diminishes anybody's
Right.
athletic experience here at Lewis.
Sure.
So John, I'm interested in, first of all, I want to say from the outset that you, the coaches, the athletes themselves, the trainers have done amazing work around COVID. So thank you for basically, it's a big part. Maybe we'll talk about this later, but 400 or so student athletes. But we have kept our teams safe throughout this whole pandemic. But could you talk a little bit about, and maybe some of the differences, but the impact that COVID has had on intercollegiate athletics here at Lewis and on other schools, because sometimes it's impacted us not because of our issues, but because of some other schools' issues. And then any differences that you have really experienced so far. The seasons are young, but this year versus last year. So just a little bit of how COVID's impacted you and your job, the coaches and the athletes.
Yeah, and I think from an athletic administrative viewpoint, at least on a national basis, and I've shared this with some people, I think that was the number one year that I saw intercollegiate athletic directors resigning or retiring. And most of them, if they were close to retirement, they retired. And if they weren't thinking about retirement, they were thinking about retirement. So I think it created, no different from the country or nationally, it created a lot of issues, and obviously we had to follow protocols. But as it relates specifically to Lewis, and again, I've mentioned this before, through the administrative people, yourself and Chris, saying we're going to be open, that provided an opportunity for us to participate. So once the school was open and we had students on campus, that gave us an edge over a number of people that weren't doing that. A lot of those are East and West Coast. But once we said, hey, we're going to be open, and we're going to try to do this. And then the GLVC took the stance that, hey, we're going to see if we can have a meaningful athletic experience for our student athletes. And they hosted, I think, 22 out of 23 championships, which in turn meant that our intercollegiate athletic teams had an opportunity to participate in those championships. So we set out last year to, and I think similar goals to administration. Let's see if we can keep our staff. Let's see if we can have a meaningful athletic experience for our student athletes and do the best that we can with the protocols that are in place. I think we accomplished that, and we succeeded at a very high level, both in the Commissioner's Cup Award and the All Sports Trophy. We finished second out of 15 people.
I know.
And not that we don't want to finish first, but second is fine, considering all the protocols that we had to follow and all the obstacles in our way. I thought it was a tremendous accomplishment by our student athletes and coaches and staff. As it relates to this year, obviously, you gentlemen were both at our game last week for volleyball, and we commented, it's nice to see that energy. And you sort of forget, hey, there's energy. There's like, a play can go one way or another. The people playing on the court can get enthusiastic about it, a little more juice in the place. And so I think that's one thing that I look forward to, being at a soccer game, seeing our soccer team playing, seeing their mom and dad in the stands.
Sure.
Outdoors, obviously, there's a lot less restrictive protocol. But even indoors, when we had our fans and our students there and our parents there, they're elated to be there, because that's the highlight for a lot of parents, just to see their son or daughter perform. And for us to give them that ability, or go back to the good old days where that was possible, really a shot in the arm for our students and our coaches in the experience. You come onto a campus and you're like, hey, I want to go see this game. And that's what some people do. So it was great to do that and trying to be there. I still think there is, I've talked to colleagues about this, somewhat of a COVID hangover still. Like you've gone to the other side and you feel like you're feeling better, but there's still protocol that we have to follow, still things that are in place. That doesn't mean that, hey, it's just it's game, no problem, game as usual. We're still in that kind of, like I said, called COVID hangover. And our athletic staff, especially our athletic trainers and all of our coaches, have done a tremendous job realizing that we're not putting those, Dave Livingston and Chris said, aren't putting these protocols in place. John Planek isn't. There are things that we have to follow if we want to compete.
Exactly.
If we want to compete, we have to do that. And you may agree with it, you may disagree with it. It's just like, hey, we got to do the best with what we have to do with the protocol that's in place.
And so one quick follow-up on that just to kind of, again, congratulate you and all the coaches and trainers and athletes. I mean, to finish second out of 15 is no small task because
Right.
these are 15 really good schools.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like we're just, it's not David and Goliath here, right? It's a real competitive set of schools.
Yeah.
And that cup, that kind of finishing second, is across all the sports. So it's, you could be really good in one, and then if you, but being good in one is never going to get you second place.
No.
Because there's teams that are 14th out of that did really well in one sport, but they can't compete across all the sports. So then I want to turn to both of you, if I could, because this next set of questions is really about facilities. But Chris, you're really involved with our CFO, Teresa, on trying to think through, just did a campus master plan. We're trying to think through. So could you talk a little bit about how the two of you work together? Maybe both of you can respond about how do we look at athletic facilities? How do we try to prioritize what we need? I know we did, both of you can talk about some of the things we did just in the last year for athletics, some of the things we're going to do this year for athletics. But what's that process like? Just so, again, coaches, current athletes, student athletes that might consider Lewis, how do we think about our facilities? How do we plan for it? And then what are some of the exciting things you see on the horizon?
Yeah, I'll have some, maybe I'll free associate a little bit, John, and then I know you probably want to announce some of the great things that have just been finished and are on the short horizon. But, John and I talk. I know John is in constant regular conversation with coaches about individual needs of sports and seasons. And then there's one other bit of context, which is that Lewis, like a lot of universities, our recreational facilities and our NCAA athletic facilities are somewhat intertwined and separable, but it's always a conversation that involves our recreational sports leaders as well. And then we have a process where we do make decisions annually about facilities changes on campus, and athletics is always a big part of that conversation as the needs continue to develop over time and things get old and need to be replaced and so on. And then the last thing I'd say is that we have just completed a campus master plan for the university, and so there was a lot more detailed investigation that involved a lot of focus groups from athletics and coaches and a lot of number crunching around square footage for X sport versus the national averages and all that kind of stuff. So that's over the next 10 years or so, that will really inform our decision making about what to do, what projects to do next. And looking back, I think sometimes it feels like we have a long list of things to do, but we do stuff all the time. We do stuff almost every year that moves these areas forward. And maybe John, you could talk a little bit about some of the recent ones.
Yeah, we recently just finished. We had a dedication ceremony last year at baseball for our baseball and softball clubhouses. So that gave us a very needed facilities out there. First and foremost, a locker room out there for our baseball and softball programs, a bathroom facility, public bathroom facilities for our fans and people that were coming to look at Lewis, really potential student athletes. And then we obviously in the baseball we added a press box. It'll help us in all of our social media and our productions from the baseball field, along with concession stand at both areas. Then we just finished painting both of our dugouts at softball. So they match our dugouts and our press box, so they match the color of our new clubhouse there. Really came together really nice. We just put in a new sprinkler system at softball. We just redid the bullpens at softball and the batting cages there. We are going to be putting in artificial turf for the baseball and softball fields. Chris and I, one of our things that we're trying to accomplish is that we recognize that there's limited dollars for capital expenditures that are in big projects. And so we're saying, okay, if that may be something we have to hold off on, let's tick off one or two per year. Can we say that, hey, we didn't have the ability to do all of this, but can we do a little bit each year so we're moving forward? And I think that helps with coaches and athletes and people who are looking at your school. Well, they moved from there to there to there. So in baseball, getting the clubhouse done, then getting an artificial infield would be beneficial. And we talked about having another practice field out by the soccer stadium. Then so those are all very important and incremental steps. And we talk about upgrading our track or redoing our track. So those are all things that are on the board. So lack of a better term, we have a big board, and let's see if we can pick some of those things off as they're up on the board, so we're making progress. And we did put in a very nice netting system for our lacrosse and track programs this summer. And like I said, we'll keep those lists up there and see if we can't pick some off on an annual basis.
One of the things I noticed, John, and yeah, Chris, you can get back to this, but one, lacrosse is relatively new to Lewis, and they've done really well. But putting up that netting, when I was at the soccer game last weekend, it helps soccer,
Yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
it just makes it easier. The
Yeah.
people running for balls, it's just.
Yeah.
Of course, it's almost essential for lacrosse because
Right.
there's so much of
Yeah.
that happens, and they're going really fast and they can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I just feel like it's a great addition. But then there's other things that are on the horizon. So
One more
maybe-
recent accomplishment, if I could ask you to talk about, is the expanded training facility.
Oh, yeah. And we recently converted what was people made on campus noted as the boardroom. And it's used, sometimes it was used during graduations, which we haven't had in person. So we converted the boardroom into an athletic training room. And I know both of you guys got a chance to tour that with me, with our team doctor that day.
Yeah.
So we've had an exam room, and we have a real nice open square footage space there that overlooks the pool and overlooks the track. And it's just another space where we have additional square footage, about doubles the square footage of our current existing training room. And it's been a really welcome addition, and will be going forward.
Yeah, that's exciting. So then on the horizon, I mean, I know you hate to talk at these things because if you say something out loud, people will say, well, that's got to happen. But again, some things, you mentioned one of them, at some point in the next 2, 3, 4 years, the replacement of the track, probably needs to happen. What are some other things that either of you are seeing? Chris, you talked about the kind of commingling of intercollegiate athletics and what I would call kind of co-curricular, clubs as well as intramurals. So what's on the horizon in terms of some of those broader areas? What do we hope to achieve? And again, I'm going to, somebody will take the clip and say, no, you said this, but I'm going to preamble
you're
it.
asking this question.
I'm going to preamble it and say, what are we hopeful for in the next 5 years? I mean, are there places that we want to put
Okay,
some energy
I'll
into?
say it.
Yeah.
So we actually got a question that come through that's really connected. So, in relationship to the assessment that I was talking about, and that we've done, thinking about the future, it seems like the primary goal overall for the university is the use of recreation and practice space, just the basic amount of square footage that we share among so many different sports, especially in the winter when a lot of outdoor sports might be working out, practicing indoors, with our need to do have recreational facilities available. So the potential solution for that would be to create or build an athletic dome on the campus that would have almost, well, we haven't calculated it all, but nearly double the square footage of that type of space. And you might want to say more about how we would use such a
Yeah, I think
addition.
obviously you nailed it put a nail on the head there with conflicts during the winter months. You're talking about basically December to May 1st, really in Chicago, and having the field house used by multiple clubs and organizations, that really creates a lot of conflict for people trying to get the same thing, floor space in inclement weather. So that would obviously free up some of the clubs' competition with the intercollegiate athletic programs, and then provide that surface for us for our lacrosse programs, soccer programs, baseball, softball, anybody that would be outdoors in inclement weather. So that would really be something to be advantageous for us.
Yeah, and so again, I know it's a dangerous question to ask, but what are we excited about? And it's interesting because twice you've used, John, doubling the space, so doubling the training rooms. And I think part of what happens is, and this is true across the campus, I mean, we have to be honest, people have desires, they see the needs, and sometimes it builds up, and they feel like they want it when it's maybe, like we're at 110% capacity and we need this right now because we're at 110 capacity. And then we end up, waiting a little bit, and then maybe when it's at 130, and somebody's going to get upset with me that I say, well, it's only at this, but then we go to double, right?
Yeah.
And then it feels like almost overnight, you double the size of the training space, and it feels like it's all used up.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
right.
Almost overnight. And I
Yeah.
think if we do, which we're hoping
point.
to, but if we do a dome, it will feel like, oh my gosh, how do we live without it? And
Yeah.
of course, that's what people are feeling right now. How
Right.
are we living without it?
Right.
Because we do have 5 months of quite inclement weather, at
Right.
least, maybe
Right.
6.
Yeah.
And it's sleeting out, and people are trying to get their early practices in for baseball or softball, or they're trying to, keep up to speed for soccer, lacrosse. As you say, there's just so much uses of indoor space. And we have a beautiful field house. So, for
Yeah.
prospective students, I want to say,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful
Yeah,
field house.
we have an indoor track and
We have an
outdoor.
indoor track.
We have an indoor track, outdoor track, and a cross-country course on campus.
Right.
There's nobody who offers those running sports, or very few schools. I don't know, there's no schools in the Chicago area that can say that.
Yeah.
And we're one of the few schools in the country that can say that.
Right.
Great
so,
point.
Great points. So we do well, and we are always trying to meet those needs. And to your point, John, and as soon as we do whatever we do next over the next 2 years,
Yeah.
the list is going to keep growing.
Right.
Right. And that's one of the things we want to also acknowledge, I think.
And maybe the other thing to say is that our athletics programs are growing.
Yes.
So
they
that
are.
it's
We
not
have more students.
the need is related to
Yes.
having
Yeah.
more student athletes, especially the lacrosse is the best
Yeah.
example in this case.
Yeah,
But
and I think the conversations that are fruitful for me are when Chris and I talk about things and saying, okay, that might be down the road a little bit, or that might be a couple years off. Let's try to do something that's going to have immediate impact,
Right.
or going to have impact next year.
Right.
Or can we cue these things out in our capital expenses? So, like I said before, we're picking off a couple a year,
Sure.
or one a year, and then you can
Sure.
say, what they'll question, well, you haven't done anything, or you should be doing more, and we can say, no, this is what we did this year, this is what we did last year, this is what we have on the board. And obviously, like anything else in higher education, it's going to come down to finances and resources. And there's not an unlimited resources for anybody, and we have to put that in perspective to what's going on around the campus as well as intercollegiate athletics.
Right, just another thing that we did recently. Again, these are small things, but I noticed them. We were at the volleyball game, a week and a half ago or
Yeah.
something, and you were mentioning to me, look at how beautiful that floor still looks, because we haven't had as many we haven't had as many people on campus being able to trudge across it after a basketball
Yeah.
game with the salt on their shoes, all
Yeah.
those things
Yeah.
that of course can happen, but it's a beautiful floor, so
Yeah.
thanks for that
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
I thought it turned out really well.
Yeah, we spent a good bit of money to get that accomplished last year before COVID, and the effect is when you see it on campus. I think John Kilpatrick has one of our cameras there that overlooks that floor.
Sure.
It's a beautiful image for us, and it does a nice job in promoting the school.
Yeah.
it's wonderful. We did have one specific facilities question that we haven't talked about, which is Borromeo.
Yeah,
So I guess one way that we are accommodating space is by expanding into lots of other spaces on campus that
Yeah.
maybe didn't, weren't originally or recently intended for that use. So maybe you could talk a little bit about golf and
Yeah.
how it's using that
Yeah.
Borromeo gym.
yeah. Our golf coach has been very aggressive, Skip Steffi, in getting donations, and the Wadsworth family has been putting forward funds for us in the facility. And so we converted half of the St. Charles Borromeo Gymnasium into a golf center. So we have a putting green there. We have a large chipping green there as well. And we have 2 simulation cameras for golf swing analysis. And we have the top-rated golf swing analysis where it tells you what's the spin of the ball, how fast it was impact, where the range was, everything that you could get at any other golf concept store or something like that. So we've been able to use that space, and I think both of you guys were out there when we were looking at some of the outdoor facility there that we could
Yeah.
try to put in a small pitching and chipping green over in that area too. So that's still on our docket to accomplish. So that's another one we could
Yeah,
pick
that's
off.
true.
But it uses space that was unutilized. And if that space is re-identified or repurposed, all of that equipment can go to our next space.
Yeah.
So in the last
yeah.
few years, our golfers have been there chipping and putting. And the nice thing about it, I think I shared this with you guys when you were out there too, is that there are a number of students who are golfers who are in the building.
Yes.
And if you're a business major and you're in the building and a golfer, it's one-stop shopping. You can go to your class, you can sleep in the building, and then you come and work in your chipping and
And by
putting.
sleep in the building, you mean live in a residence
Live
hall
in residence hall.
in Borromeo.
We don't want people sleeping in the
not
hallways, but
Well, I did have an interesting-
that happens sometimes too.
We don't
I
wanna
did
hear
have I did have an interesting conversation with our chief of police, Mike Zagallo, when he asked me, he said, hey, there's student athletes in here in the golf center, at night putting and chipping and working on their game. And I said, that's perfectly permissible. That's fine. If they're in there doing that, if they're behaving themselves and putting and chipping and working on their game, and it's after hours, what a great thing to say that our students are active in a space on campus. So I said, so it's a little insight to those students appreciating that space.
Yeah. Well, we really, I mean, I will say that that's, you've mentioned it a couple times, but the excitement of having students back on campus and kind of fully engaged has been just a boost of energy, I think, for the whole campus. And I will say that intercollegiate athletics is a part of that. I've heard from many people that I just, it's so nice to, hear, because sometimes it's just literally you're walking and you hear the whistle, right? There might be, you're going to dinner and you're not going to the soccer game, but you hear the whistle in the background and you're like, oh man, there's life on this campus again. And it's just, it's really great.
I love seeing the cross-country runners run by all the time. It makes me feel guilty and inspired.
At the same time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and we'll have two large cross-country courses, competitions here. So next Saturday, the 9th, we'll have the GLVC, our crossover, Lewis crossover, and then on the 23rd, we'll have the GLVC Conference Championship, both on our campus. And the crossover is the largest Division II cross-country championship in the country. Amazing. So that'll be, the nice thing about that, it's over break, so we won't be disturbing many people on campus with a run around campus. But that's really been an added benefit for us to have that. And I think we're hosting the 23 or 24 NCAA Division II championships on our campus.
Oh, wonderful.
So that brings a large number of people to our campus. We also have been very active in having high school and grammar school meets.
I was just going to ask you about that, John, because I had actually, when I was at Signifa Day, one of my college friends, his son is running this weekend, Saturday. We're hosting a meet, and so he was like, well, will I see you on Saturday? I'm like, well, I got to be there for family day. I mean, this is what happens. But
I can do the bingo by myself.
Right? No, I think it's about, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that in the way that kind of our athletic facilities play a role in the Chicago metro area as a resource for, again, high school students, grade school students, because this is a grade school meet.
Right.
But grade school kids coming out to Lewis University by the hundreds to compete. But this happens because that's one thing, and then we have camps, right, that happen throughout the year. Our coaches and some of our student athletes are helping young people, might be in 5th grade, might be in 7th grade, might be in 12th grade, that get these camps. And so as a resource, we don't just serve 400 student athletes that attend Lewis. We don't just serve then another 6,400 students who can use the kind of intramurals and all of those kinds of things. Our facilities serve the broader metro area. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that the cross-country course has been a resource for us, reaching out to prospective student athletes, namely cross-country runners. So in the first week in September, we had St. Ignatius host their invitational here. So we had a number of Catholic schools, obviously mission-driven like Lewis University on our campus, very positive for us. And tomorrow we'll have the suburban parochial schools here, or not tomorrow, Saturday, and that's about 800 runners.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And there'll be more minivans on this campus that day than any other day. So about 1,500 spectators, and then we'll move on to our crossover. And then the following weekend, we'll have the Chicago Catholic League Championship. So prospective high school students will be here, both boys and girls from all the Catholic schools in the area. So another resource for us. Our coaches, our cross-country coaches, James Kearney and Dana, and our track coach do a great job in helping out, knowing that that's a great way to get somebody on campus. So those high school people, whatever high school they come from, are driving a bus up here, coming through our front gate and seeing Lewis. If they haven't experienced Lewis before, they didn't know where we were at or what our campus looked like, in order to get the cross-country course, you have to cut across campus, so you get to see it right away. So I think that's been very, very positive. We do the same thing for our baseball field. It gets used all during the summer where we invite people to, our softball field does that as well. And then we've had a good habit of hosting IHSA soccer super sectionals every year that I've been, it's the last 10 years. And we'll continue to do that this year. We have a IHSA super sectional for boys soccer. We've hosted girls soccer before. We hosted girls softball. We hosted girls basketball. So it's a way for us to reach out to the community, like you said, but also a way for people to identify with Lewis and say, oh, that's where Lewis is at. Oh, I didn't know that they had. Most of the people say, I didn't know you were back here, or what a great campus you have. Most of the people in the cross country, when they run, because they're in the back of our campus, say, you got a great campus back here. You got a lot of things happening. So it's a great exposure for us and a way to reach out to the community.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just about out of
We are.
time.
We're running out,
You know,
but-
just in terms of other announcements, are there any other upcoming big events you would like to mention
Yeah.
before, and we can follow up and.
Absolutely. We'll have, like I said, the cross country, the crossover on the 9th, and then the 23rd, the GLVC Championship. We also do on an annual basis our Flyer Fan Fest, where we highlight our men's, women's basketball team on the 28th of October. That's the Thursday night. A lot of our students come out there. We have this pizza slam dunk contest, three-point shooting
great.
contest. Really a good opportunity for people to come out. And then I think February 3rd, we're getting a little ahead of myself, we're at our annual Christian Brothers Bash, where we honor the Christian Brothers at a basketball game. I think the 25th of January, we have our Lewis's Coaches Academy, something that we started a few years back. And then I think our Flyer Red Dinner is slated for March 17th. So a lot of things on the calendar and a lot of excitement coming. We're just really happy to see excited. I think our men's, women's basketball teams are going to be dynamite this year. And our track teams obviously will be great, as they always have been. But I'm really looking forward to this year. Our soccer team's off to both men's and women's soccer off to a great start. Women's volleyball ranked, as you said in the preamble to this. And I really think it's going to be an exciting year for Lewis Flyer Athletics.
Yeah, so there's a question that came in. I'm not 100% sure what it's about, but I'm going to ask you what I think the intent of the question is. So, and it's really about being a scholarship athlete. You mentioned at the beginning that, you know, if you talk to somebody just out and about and they say, well, you know, could my son compete at Lewis? Could they? And you would say to them, well, you know, they need to be being recruited at Division I, and then maybe they don't end up at a Division I school, but they have to be at that level. But could you just say, because we are going to run out of time, but maybe in a minute or two, could you talk about the kinds of scholarships that a student gets and how that plays into their kind of overall financial aid package? So, because this feels to me like it's a prospective student or a prospective parent that's asking it.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be a scholarship athlete, and how does it make a Lewis education more affordable for those students?
Yeah, I think that the goal of our intercollegiate athletic coaches is to make sure that Lewis is affordable to them. And so affordable then means many things, but basically when you say, hey, how much is it going to cost for my son or daughter to attend school here? And then there's packages that are available, as you know. We tend, because of the package that's available, to recruit highly gifted academic students. That goes against their package that they have to pay here at Lewis. And then we try to supplement that with, sometimes that may be supplemented with financial aid, the need-based aid based upon the family's income. And another thing that factors into that, their athletic ability. They're really good athletes, and that's going to help them offset the cost of Lewis education.
Right.
And so I think that the equation that our coaches tried to work with, hey, I'm going into this home, or I'm talking to this parent over the phone, or talking to this young man or young woman, and saying, how do I make a Lewis education affordable? We think it's a great education. We think it's very fairly priced, but now how do we get them to come here? Right. And I think that we use the packaging of athletic aid, academic aid, and financial aid. And it goes all, we hope that we slide across a number at that table to say, this is what you'll have to pay to come to Lewis University. And we can come to an agreement saying, we can do that. We think that's a worthwhile education and an investment in our son or daughter.
Right, and I think that just, again, that really helpful, John. And I guess I would say to prospective student athletes, prospective parents of student athletes that might be watching now or watch it in the future, is that, you know, it's best to kind of, you can reach out to our admissions office or also reach out to a coach. If, you know, a lot of people now put together packages of videos and they say, here's some clips from, or here's my times if I'm a cross-country runner. But, you know, reach out to the coaching staff of your specific sport that you're interested in and let them know of your interest. And over a 2 or 3 year period, sometimes people are reaching out as, you know, juniors, or sometimes even as early as sophomores, just getting a sense of this team. And then over time, that scholarshiping conversation may become a part of the conversation. So, John, I just want to thank you again for joining us. Really great conversation. I'm very excited about the rest of the year. It's as you said, we have a lot to look forward to, and, you know, I think hopefully we'll be in the top 3 again of those 15 schools. Don't want to get, you know,
I like that. I like that.
I think that's where we want to shoot for, and and you often talk about this in several events that I'm at as we near the end of the year. But I'll just say, because we didn't get to it today, because we're always running out of time, there's more to talk about, the unbelievable level of academic commitment and achievement of our student athletes. So, you know, Chris and I and John, you know, every year we honor our students who are
Yeah.
getting GPAs of 3.5, 3.75, 3.9, honoring some students who have 4.0s after in really amazing competitive situations where they're so competitive on the athletic floor, field, turf, and they're so competitive in a degree program that is very challenging, and we see that every year. And so I just want to note how proud we are of our student athletes. So we have to wrap up the show, so thank you so much for joining us today. We will be off next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Many blessings to you and your family. Have a wonderful weekend.